That's Based with Caleb. Salvatore is a comedic informative production, meaning it covers serious topics in a humorous manner. Some of the opinions expressed are satirical hyperbole, some are not. Some of the content may not be suitable for all listeners. If you're easily offended, tune out now. We don't want pussy bleeding little bitches consuming our content. I have dementia and pooped my pants while visiting the Pope.
Well, there we have it. It's an emergency press conference. You know who the sponsors are. They're all scrolling right down below. I'm not contracted to do it for these extra episodes, so we're not going to. But I figured it's timely, and since we pre-taped the Saturday episode, I better talk about it today. I'm sitting here. It is pouring rain outside of my home, just outside of Omaha, Nebraska, out in the outskirts, where I've hidden from the world. No, just better neighborhood over here. But nonetheless, we've got Donald Trump has been found guilty on all 34 counts. Drama, drama, drama. And I say in the show that airs tomorrow, hey, if Trump gets found guilty, we're going to talk about it Sunday. Nah, we're doing it today. We're going to talk about it today. So this is CNN. Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 charges. Looks ahead with a straight face after judge denies the acquittal motion. This is going to get appealed. But nonetheless, the sentencing date is set for July 11th. This is, now we talk on the Saturday show, and we've covered throughout the year about the tomfoolery going on in this case. I think that kind of goes without saying. I'm not really going to cover that because I'm not just going to sit here and preach to the choir. We all know what the case is. We all know that the judge told them they only needed to have four voters on the jury out of the 12 members to find him guilty. They didn't need a unanimous decision. Technically, that's the law in New York, but it's unprecedented for them to use it. Crazy how they just decide to use it when it's Donald Trump who's on trial. We get it. It's a kangaroo court. We get it that this is bullshit. No one's going to argue with you on that. Not at least not on this show. We're not. I completely understand. But the reality here, which a lot of people don't want to talk about, and a lot of people want to avoid, the reality here is we are going to have to start facing the music on this. What happens next? Well, what happens next is he goes to sentencing on July 11th. But after that, then what happens? If he's sentenced to jail to any significant amount of time, we've got to do some soul searching here. Is it plausible for someone to run for president from prison and win? Because I understand he's been railroaded. I understand all of that. But how plausible is it that a guy who's been convicted on 34 counts in a felony trial can run for president from jail and win? If it's not plausible, we may have to start looking another direction. And I know that that's blasphemy to some of you, but it's blasphemy because you know I'm right. You know I'm right. I think that there's about 5 to 10% of the voters in any election that can be swayed either way. Right? I think it's about 45% Republican, 45% Democrat, give or take a few depending on the year. And then I think you've got about 5 to 10% of the population that you're really competing for that can be swayed either direction, that hasn't already made their mind up to some degree. And I just fear that the path to victory gets really, really small if he's running from prison. I don't think that it's attainable. And if this were a low-stakes election, I wouldn't be as stressed about it. But we've gone over until we're blue in the face how detrimental Joe Biden has been to this country up until this point, and how America's in survival mode if he gets reelected. I don't think there's much more dangerous to this country than a lame duck Joe Biden who doesn't answer to anybody. So what do I think happens? Well, I think it gets appealed. I don't think he goes to jail July 11th, regardless of what happens. I think it'll get appealed. And we'll see where it goes from there. But don't downplay this. There's no running from this. I'm not saying he's guilty. But we can't keep running from this. This is something that needs to be addressed. Who replaces him? I don't know. Maybe it's Vivek. Maybe it's Ron DeSantis. God, I hope it's not Nikki Haley. It could be a lot of different people that replaces him. I don't see him going down that way, though. I don't see him going down that way, which has been my chief critique of Donald Trump from the beginning, which is that he's not doing this for the good of the country. He's doing it for the good of Donald Trump. If Trump's the nominee and it's looking like he's going to spend the entirety of the election from a jail cell, I don't see any circumstance where he steps down and says, I'm going to get out of the way. Ron DeSantis, Vivek, whoever, Tim Scott, whoever, you take it from here. I don't see a scenario where that happens. So then what becomes the question? Well, the next question is, now what? You don't run a third party against him because the third party stands no chance. You kneecap him, and then you guarantee 4 more years of Biden. But at the same time, Donald Trump running from prison also more or less guarantees 4 more years of Joe Biden. I don't think he loses any hardline supporters from this. I just don't see him running for president successfully from a jail cell. I don't see it as a possibility. Yeah, I mean, this is groundbreaking shit. We don't do these emergency broadcasts very often. Unless, see, I didn't even take time to get the lower third working. I mean, take that off. I'm by myself. Mia's not here. It's unprecedented times we're living in right now. And my fear is that we're witnessing the fall of the Republic in real time. This was a kangaroo court that was more or less decided from the get-go. This could you don't have to like Donald Trump to admit that he's been railroaded. There have been a lot of people that have admitted they don't like Donald Trump and said, yeah, but he's getting screwed over here. You can't tell me this wasn't political. Yesterday, you had Joe Biden schedule a press conference right outside of the courtroom. But it's not political? You've had AOC and Karine Jean-Pierre flat out say that this is about the 2024 election. You had a prosecutor who ran his entire campaign on, hey, I'm going to be the one to take Trump down. Didn't matter if he was guilty or innocent, he was going to be the one to take Trump down. It's a complete witch hunt. It's a complete witch hunt. And the problem is now the cat's out of the bag, or as I like to say, Pandora's shitbox has been opened. And this is only the beginning. If you think this stops with Donald Trump, regardless of your opinion on him, you're out of your freaking mind. Completely nuts. This doesn't stop with Donald Trump. This is going to continue to get worse, and it's going to continue to expand. This administration has just set the precedent that every time power changes hands in this country, and it does, because Democrats often forget that power changes hands and the precedents that they set are going to be used against them, but that when power changes hands in this country, as it does often, the next thing you do is prosecute your predecessor. Go after him with the full extent of the law. Because I promise you, Republicans, specifically not if it's a Donald Trump or someone of his ilk, aren't going to let these shots go unanswered.
Politically.
They're going to clap back. And it's going to be nastier than what Biden did. It's going to be more bitter, more angry, and probably more egregious. And at that point, it's war. Not literally, but, as we say on this show,
politically.
It'll be war. Every 4 to 8 years, power shifts hands, and whoever takes office, instead of actually getting shit done, they're just going to use the Department of Justice to go after their opponents. You've opened the bag. I hope you enjoy it, but the bag's been opened. I don't know if there's any way that we can recover as a population from this. If you look 23 years ago to 9/11, how united we were as a country, and compare it to right now, it's a 180 swap. It is an entire polar shift, ideologically and in terms of unity. It's a train wreck. The fact is, this verdict, whether you agree with it or not, just divided this country the furthest that it's been since the Civil War. This is the most divided we've been since the Civil War. (1861). It's 163 years. This is the most we've been divided since. And it ain't even close. It's not even close. We're not as divided as we were during the Civil Rights era. We're not as divided as we were during Vietnam. We're not as divided as we were over the Iraq War. And it's kind of hilarious if you think about it, that the guy that hosts The Apprentice was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the problem was Trump was never the source of the problem. Trump was a symptom of what's wrong with this country. There's been an anger brewing for a long time. A long time. People have been pitted against each other by the establishment and their media and their intelligence agencies to absolutely hate each other. And Donald Trump was just the catalyst that blew the hinges off the door. This has been brewing for a long time. Volcanoes don't just erupt. There's signs for years before they do, more often than not. If your house has bad foundation, it doesn't just collapse one day, unless you're not paying attention to it. It starts with a couple cracks, and then it continues to expand from there. Donald Trump was just your overweight sister tripping and falling after 10 years of ignoring the cracks in the foundation of your house. That's just what brought the house down. It was a windstorm that was a little too strong. That's what this is. And
That's based with Caleb Salvatore.
wow, I hit this is why I'm never in charge of the board here. I mean, what else do we got? I'm looking at more updates here. Drudge Report just says guilty 34 times. I don't know what that means. House Speaker Mike Johnson calls it a shameful day. Yeah, we know that. Trump blames Biden administration. Says our whole country's being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. Not wrong. Not wrong. They've admitted it. Campaigning outside the courthouse. Sending your DOJ to raid his house. I mean, yeah, it's not incorrect here. It's not incorrect. And I know this is going to piss a lot of our listeners off, and I don't care, but it may be time to start looking for Plan B. Now, Trump can still be president legally. Must be a natural-born citizen, at least 35 years old, and have been a U.S. resident for at least 14 years. Those are the only requirements. And like I said, I know there's some of you out there that are like, well, he's going to gain voters from this because he feels he's being prosecuted. Yeah, he will. And the longer the witch hunt went on, I thought the better it was for Trump. But now that the conviction's been laid down, it'll be interesting to see if this helps or hurts him. I don't see it helping him. I am totally willing to accept it if I'm wrong, and I hope I am. I think people like the idea of things a lot more than they like the actual practice of them. They like to talk about things, and they like to, in theory, until the chips are actually down, and then it becomes a whole different discussion. I think people like to say, "Oh yeah, I'd vote for this man's being prosecuted. Either you're persecuted. This is a modern day witch hunt." Blah blah blah, and then when the conviction actually comes, a lot of people succumb to social pressure, or they're just so weak-minded they change their opinion. So, while there are people that are going to vote for him now because of this conviction that may not have otherwise voted in the first place, I think that this is, I think there's going to be 1.5 or 2 for every one that he gains that are going to vote the other way or stay home that would have otherwise voted for him. I don't see this as a good thing the way a lot of conservatives do. The way a lot of people I'm seeing on Twitter are saying, "Oh, congratulations to Donald Trump on winning the 2024 election." I don't see this as a slam dunk victory for Trump after this. And I'm in the minority, and that's completely fine. I'm concerned that yes, it's quite clear that this hasn't been a fair trial. I don't know how the president and most famous man in the world since Jesus Christ could get a fair trial. But nonetheless, here we are. There's going to be protests. There's going to be clashes with police. There's going to be some people that have the urge to say and do some really stupid things, and I'm asking you all to calm down for a moment. It's all right to be angry. You're 100% justified in it. But I am asking people to please not do anything stupid. I promise that doesn't end well for us, and that's another thing they can use to delegitimize us as conservatives. So pump the brakes. He'll get his day in court. There'll be an appeal. I guarantee you there'll be an appeal. How that works out, we'll have to see. And we're going to have some soul searching to do, guys, because I'm hearing a lot of you talk about how the system's is broken beyond repair, and the elections in the court system are rigged. Well, if that's the case, then what's the point in voting? I'm not encouraging anyone get violent or do anything stupid. But if you're going to sit there and yell about how broken and corrupt the system is and how it's beyond repair and they're just going to fix all the elections and all the court cases against their political rivals, what options do you have left? Because if you're going to tell me all that and then turn around and in the next breath tell me that's why it's so important that you get out and vote in November, I'm not going to take you seriously. I agree, we have a lot of flaws in the systems. I wouldn't go as far to say it's beyond repair. But a lot of you out there that are running your mouths about how rigged this system is, there's a very real possibility that 5 months from now, you're going to have to face the music and you're going to have some decisions to make. Again, not saying anyone should get violent. That's not what I'm saying. Not suggesting that at all. But for the folks with that ideology, this is going to hit you like a ton of bricks. Because we've always had, well, at least the courts are just. Well, they're not here. So now what? We cross our fingers and hope the election isn't full of bullshit? Well, we just covered we do cover on Saturday, Brandon Herrera versus Tony Gonzalez primary down in Texas's 23rd district, the Republican primary. Hot garbage. Full of fraud. We'll talk all about it. All kinds of discrepancies in that race, and that's an establishment Republican, not a Democrat. I don't see the election system getting any better than it is right now. I think the Democrats have found ways to skirt the rules, and we're going to die on the hill of principle and not cheat back. That's the reality of it. This is uncharted waters we're going into, though. Absolutely. Well, you have a guy that's a convicted felon, likely waiting on appeal, become the next president of the United States. How electable is he? There's going to have to be a lot of conversations people have. Will I still vote for him? Yeah. Yeah, I will. I will, because I'm smart enough to see through this kangaroo court, and I know what a disaster Joe Biden's been and how dangerous he is for another 4 years. I'm willing to say, like, I'm able to see through that. But the question is, how many people that are otherwise on the fence are going to go out and vote for a guy that just got convicted on 34 counts? Doesn't matter how bad he got screwed. My question for conservatives and Republicans is now what? Who's the guy now? And again, this has been my chief complaint with Donald Trump, is that it's not about him, or excuse me, it's not about the country, it's about him. Now, he does have too big of an ego to let the country fail on his watch, and I've said a million times before, I don't care how the job gets done, I just want the job to get done right. So I think he'd do a good job because he doesn't, or because he has such a big ego that he wouldn't allow himself to fail, not because he cares about you and I. But again, that's water under the bridge. But here's where you run into problems. If he does go to jail, if he's denied appeal or whatever the case may be, and it's looking like he's going to have to run his campaign from jail, and his poll numbers are in the toilet, I'm telling you right now, there is absolutely no chance that man steps down and hands the keys to the car to somebody else. He will go down in flames running his campaign from jail. He will do those little inmate interviews and run his campaign from jail. Those phone calls, those will be his rallies. It's just something to watch. I don't see him doing, if his poll numbers are in the toilet, I don't see him doing the right thing and saying, hey, you know what, Vivek, Ron DeSantis, it's your turn. I mean, this is an interesting predicament. We've never been here before. We got two guys running from two major parties. One of them is mentally incapacitated, and there's no way he makes it through a full 4-year term. And then the other one could very well be accepting his inauguration from prison. You have to ask yourself this. As much as they hate Trump, what if we do win in November? Against all odds, everything aside. What if we do win in November? Do you think Biden steps aside? Do you think Biden goes along with the peaceful transition of power? Keep in mind, this is, before you laugh at me, this is an administration that has done just about everything they accuse Donald Trump of doing. Typically, when they accuse the other side of something, it's a confession or it's foreshadowing as to what they're going to do next. There is a reality where Joe Biden says, you know what? Sorry, I can't in good faith let this threat to democracy take over the White House. Why would they not? They've already rigged the court system against him. And the problem there is, since that man took office, he has successfully weeded out all of the dissenters. Anyone in the military, anyone in the intelligence agencies that would put up a fight is out. They're gone. He's run them out one way or the other. So there is a realistic scenario where Biden loses and says, I ain't going nowhere. And he has the entire military, all of the intelligence agencies, and the mainstream media propaganda machine that will feed to half the country that'll believe it in a heartbeat that this is actually the right thing to do. And it's different when we refuse to go along with the peaceful transition of power. And you want to talk about us having decisions to make then? Well, the decision may have been made for us at that point. They will expand the Supreme Court. They will pass sweeping gun control after they strike down the previous decisions. They will limit your freedom of speech and call it misinformation. They will make it illegal to criticize them. They will destroy this country as we know it if they get reelected. This isn't a game anymore. The closer we get to November, the more and more real this shit gets. And for the 1000th time, do not get violent. I would never accuse it, or I would never encourage anyone to be violent against anybody. Ever. Calm down. Just relax for a little bit. But the reality is, if we keep going this direction, and if the man who ran as the great uniter doesn't stop intentionally trying to divide us, which is exactly what he's doing. You don't prosecute your political opponents and tell half the country they're terrorists unless you're trying to divide us. They are going to push us into a civil war. It ain't going to be us versus Biden and the military. It'll be left versus right. They said, remember the New Year's show? We played that video of that ex-spook on MSNBC, that ex-CIA spook that said, don't be surprised if you see a black swan event in the late spring, early summer of 2024. Well, here it is. A black swan event is an unpredictable or unforeseen event, typically one with extreme consequences. So think 9/11, think the housing collapse, Russia invading Ukraine. Those are Taiwan or China invading Taiwan, potentially. Those are black swan events. This may be your black swan event here. This could be the big one that strikes some divide we haven't seen since the 1800s. This could be your summer of love. We saw it 4 years ago, how violent and divided everyone was over the summer in 2020 after the George Floyd riots and the other BLM riots. This could be it. You got a lot of people that feel like they've been persecuted on the right now that may want to take to the streets, and it may not be 100% peaceful. This is what they want. They want us fighting each other. And here's my thing. The establishment wants you guys to get violent. They want you to assault people. They want you to resist arrest from police officers and go out and break the law, because they want to convict as many of you of felonies as they possibly can, because that means you can't go out and vote against them. So if you do want to protest, absolutely, by all means, but for God's sakes, don't break the law, because you're playing right into their hand. January 6th should tell. They want a January 6th, because like I said, it makes it so they can ban you from voting. And they can also have something to point at and say, look at these MAGA terrorists at it again. Vote Biden for the security of this country. Don't hand it over to the insurgents, to the insurrectionists. So just think. That's all I'm asking. We'll see you guys Saturday. The show's going to be a lot more lighthearted tomorrow. No, Saturday. Yeah, 2 days from now. Days are all fucked up. Show's going to be a lot more lighthearted. We're talking with Rachel Nelson, chair of the Nebraska Libertarian Party, about their nomination. And like I said, it was pre-taped, so this is where we're covering this right now. But see you then. Cheat on your taxes, not your spouse. And as always, stay based.